I welcome the train of emails which have been provided to us. I think that was something that was requested before Christmas by the Joint Oireachtas Committee. I suppose just as a huge sense of frustration, as the lead speaker here this morning, we all, only TDs here on the committee, so we all finished voting after 10 o'clock last night. You then get home, you get back in here this morning, and the first time that we see an opening statement and these emails are at 8:45 this morning. The staff who have been here for all of that time under severe pressure then to try and get it to us, and we're trying to read redacted emails and thread them together, presented to us in reverse order, by the way, in the timeline. And it's very, very difficult to string it together or to have a coherent understanding of what is happening. And, you know, there's a long-running tradition in this Public Accounts Committee that organisations that provide their documents late often go on. We go on to find out that there's information that was being hidden from this committee. And I would say to you that you put yourself in that suspicious position because of providing the information late. I accept it's difficult. I know there was a request for you to defer this meeting, but the chair said it would be here. It was a long invitation period. Can I just say though on one point, we do appreciate that you're here, and we appreciate that you're willing to engage in us. And given that you've provided this documentation, I wanted to go on and talk about the 98% of the recommendations which have been completed. I'd love to talk to you about the development of Dalymount Stadium, about all the great work going on in grassroots football. But I presume that you have provided this evidence because you believe before you come on and ask us about the spreading of the betting tax, which I actually support that concept, there must be a credibility issue here, because there was. You were asked something very specifically at the Joint Oireachtas Committee. This information is provided then very last minute. So I want to explore that issue first, although that wasn't my intention this morning. I wanted to talk about all of the COVID supports and all of the other issues. At the Joint Oireachtas Committee, I suppose, Mr. Hill, there was a suggestion that the overpayment in regards to yourself was not something that was sort of directly in your control. And yet, from the emails which have been provided us this morning, it's very clear that the request for holiday pay came from yourself. Can you just address that concern that either the Joint Oireachtas Committee was misled before Christmas, or that you didn't provide the full version of events? And it doesn't seem to tally with the evidence that's before us here, where you specifically requested the payments.
Look, I'm very happy to address those questions, and I do believe that what was said in the JOC is consistent to what we've presented to you today. But if you give me a few seconds, I will go through and give some context, perhaps, to those emails. So I recognise that the redacted emails do not give full clarity on the sequence of events, but that was because of legal reasons, as the Chair has explained. But we did look to give you context in the opening statement, and I'm happy to expand on that as much as I can do legally. You'll see that an email was sent to me, actually in mid-November, which came from the junior employee we're seeking to protect from a legal perspective, just to make that clear. In that email, I am asked if I agree to a request from that junior colleague to commute holidays that the employee could not take for exceptional circumstances to a cash payment. And I accept that you can't see the words in the redacted statement, but that is for legal reasons. But within that, just to explain, both the then Finance Director and the COO had agreed to this request already, and that's referenced in the email. So I too agreed to it, although that was not a formal approval, as due process would need to be followed. Within that response, I am comfortable, because it doesn't relate to the junior employee, in saying that I added a throwaway line to that junior colleague saying, "Can you negotiate the same for me, please?" Question mark, exclamation mark. For me, it's clear that this was not a formal request, and it was in an email back to the junior colleague. I copied the then Finance Director to the note, as I agreed as he had done. He obviously takes that line as a request and uses that email chain to go himself to the then chair. From then on, I am not part of that process, although I am asked 5 weeks later, as would be normal at the end of the year, how many days holiday I have taken. I reply and ask what is happening with them, saying clearly that I would be happy to carry them over. The finance director, the then finance director, who was copied on that mail, continues the discussion with the chair and with the other people in the
Chair,
emails that you
Mr.
see.
Can I just pause you at that point?
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that the email received from us, it says from Alex O'Connell on the 5th of December 1541, and in the second paragraph it says, Jonathan requesting to be paid out his unused holidays. Are you suggesting that Mr. O'Connell was incorrect in taking that line that you say in an email I can't see, that he was incorrect in taking that as a request?
I can't comment for him in relation to whether he was incorrect
or
not.
you said that you didn't intend to request it.
That was his interpretation of the line that I have just explained to you, which isn't in the redacted emails, but that was his interpretation of it.
You're suggesting that Mr. O'Connell did not read your instruction correctly, that a joke in an email went on to become a formal process?
I'm not saying that, but it's clear from the emails that is what happened.
You either requested it or you didn't. Did you request it?
And I'm saying that it was a throwaway line in the email, which he then interpreted.
Okay, let me put it a different way.
Do
you think it was reasonable for Mr. O'Connell to believe it was a request?
I think it was simply Mr. O'Connell's interpretation of the line.
It's an extraordinary situation to put a fellow colleague in, to come before a joint Oireachtas Committee and to put all of the blame for all of this on a misinterpretation of a line you inserted in your email. Do you accept as a Chief Executive Officer the onus is on you to have been more clear and more reasonable and also to have prevented it?
Sure. And in fairness to the former finance director, I think he decided to go down an appropriate route, which was to talk to other senior people, both on the executive and on the board at the time. So he went with that.
And were all of those discussions, so his decision to speak to all of those senior people was all done without your knowledge?
Correct. So the email interchange that then followed. So he sent the email to the chair.
I hear you. Yeah.
The chair sent that on to Liz Joyce. Liz Joyce, as Liz characterised at the JOC, said that wasn't a proposal from. But
you weren't subject to that. You weren't subject to that.
It was simply an inquiry, and so he followed what he believed was the right process to make that inquiry, and the system. So is it your assertion? The process then followed. And I think,
is it your assertion before the committee that you included this throwaway line at the bottom of an email, again that the committee can't see, and then your next knowledge of it was that the money arrived in your account?
No, as you'll see from the emails, there was an interaction at the end of the year in relation to a question that would be asked of all employees at the end of the year as to how many holidays you'd taken, and there was an interaction in relation to that where, again, the finance director confirmed that a process was ongoing.
Yeah, so you were aware. You were aware that a process was ongoing.
And I said, and I left it to him for that process to.
Okay. So we've confirmed, first of all, that there's a dispute about how the request arose, but it's not disputed that you were aware that there was a request for your unused holidays to be paid.
As I said, I was not party to any of the discussions between the senior people who then went off with the process. I think the organisation and the association has admitted that.
Just to come back to your own evidence, Mr. Hill. Just to come back to your own, you were aware at the end of the year a request for the number of days that were outstanding, and you were also aware that there was a process to make a payment in exchange for those. You were aware. And
I allowed Alex and the process to then ensue. And then to
answer
your question, by the next I heard of it was a full 10 weeks later, was in relation to an email that was sent to me saying that the association had decided to make the payment. And that was confirmed
Mr. Hill, the JOC. As the Chief Executive of an organisation, I'm sure you have some understanding and you rely on the HR advice within the organisation. I'm sure you're aware that the Organisation Working Time Act provides minimum rest for employees, not minimum pay. The entitlement that you have to holidays within the annual leave within the Organisation Working Time Act and the EU directive provides employees with rest, not payments. Why then, as the Chief Executive of an organisation, would you request payment for rest? And do you understand that you've also said here that you're aware that that happened in another circumstances, and it would be incredibly bad practice, as Ms Joyce has said, for rest to be compensated for pay. In fact, many readings of the Act would say that it's prohibited.
Yeah, and in both circumstances, the association looked at the looked at the situations and decided there were exceptional circumstances. So that was their approach to it. And the association, I'm sure, is fully aware of what you've just explained in relation to the legislation. And the association is fully committed to ensuring that all staff get the requisite amount of rest they get. But as I say,
so you're suggesting
all of that would have been discussed within the group, and I was not part of that discussion, and neither would it be.
So you're suggesting that there was something specific and unique to your request that you didn't make, that the organisation went on to deviate from what is not only best practice but lay down the legislation. So something in this email, right, which is entirely redacted, every single element of it except for the logo at the bottom, something in that magic email says a specific reason why the chief executive of an organisation should be paid in compensation for holidays and rest. No, are you saying that? Is that what's in it? I don't know what's in the email. Do you know what's in it?
Okay. I do know what's in it, yes.
Yeah, what is it? What's specific?
But for legal reasons, which the Chair has explained, the FAI, the association, did not feel comfortable that it could release the detail of that email in relation to the junior employee.
But I'm talking about your request.
And I've explained to you that my position in relation to that. And so it was the association, rather than myself, that looked at all of those issues that you've just been talking about in the round and chose, under exceptional circumstances, to make the payment.
And it's that term, exceptional circumstances, which you've used twice now, that I want to concentrate on. What's the exceptional circumstances that you outlined or that the organisation outlined on your behalf that meant that they deviated both from best practice, your own organisation's HR practices and the legislation?
And I think it's quite simple in relation to both situations, was the inability in a very difficult year in 2020 for either the junior employer or myself to take all of the holiday period.
Okay, so I don't wish to discuss the junior employees. Let's not confuse the facts. I'm asking what your basis was. So there was something unique in that year that meant that you weren't able to take your annual leave.
That is what the association decided when it reviewed the situation, correct.
So you never made a case to anybody that you were unable to take annual leave?
At no point did I make any case in relation to that.
It's an extraordinary situation that an organisation would somehow, in a train of emails, pick up on what is a throwaway line, that they would then initiate a process to cost that organisation money, that without any recourse to you, they would build a case that meant it was exceptional and unusual that you should receive this in breach of your own organisation's HR guidelines, in breach of what is best practice in terms of employee relations, in breach of perhaps legislation, that they would do all of that on their own and that you would not, you had no part in any of that? That they did all of that on their own?
I understand your position, I understand your statement, but that's the situation.
Yeah. I would like to have asked Ms Joyce to expand on her email, but I've run out of time. Like, Mr Cook, it's a very difficult situation for you as President, with all of the members, to hear Mr Hill outline a scenario that I think is incredibly difficult to believe. Do you have confidence in Mr Hill?
I think under Johnson we've made great strides so far in the organisation. I have confidence that we can continue to make great strides as a board and the senior leadership team going forward.
Mr Cook, I hear you choosing your words correctly, and everyone should do that before an Oireachtas Committee. You have confidence in the board, you have confidence in the senior leadership team, you have confidence that the FAI will make progress. My question was, do you have confidence in Mr Hill, given the evidence that has been presented here this morning?
I have confidence in the senior leadership team and the board going forward.
Okay. I don't want to continue to press you the same question. When you say you have confidence in the leadership team and you're not answering the question that you have confidence in Jonathan individually, can I infer some?
I think that Jonathan is part of the senior leadership team.
So you have confidence in Mr Hill?
Senior leadership team.
Do you have confidence in Mr Hill?
I have confidence in the senior leadership team and the board to continue the progress that we're making.
Like, I appreciate you're serving in a role. You know, it's an important role. It's important. It's hard to support volunteers. They want you to know, do you have confidence in Mr Hill, who's paid a significant amount of money on behalf of the sport?
My confidence has certainly, by the fact, has been challenged by the events.
Could I, Chair, please, I'm just at the end. There's two other executive boards.
Just to be mindful of the fact no agreement, all right?
Yeah, there's two other executive board members, Mr. Keohane and Ms. Guy. Do you have confidence in Mr. Hill?
I think, yes, I have confidence, Mr. Hill, that we have made a huge amount of progress over the last number of years. The organisation, from what I have read in my few months here, has gone an awful long way from the legacy of the past. And some of that has been referenced by the statements from Sport Ireland and the department. So huge progress.
So you have confidence in Mr. Hill?
But I do recognise there's been a slip-up. And I have confidence that this leadership team, with Jonathan, will take on the challenges ahead, including the learnings from the slip-up. I mean, clearly we have slipped back.
One last question, and I appreciate you acknowledging the slip-up. Others might call it a different world. Who do you lay the accountability for that slip-up with? Is it with Mr. Hill?
Well, I think it's on the organisation, including Mr. Hill. It's on the overall organisation. Clearly, I wasn't here at the time, and that's not an excuse, but I wasn't. But I've taken the time to read in, which is back to your earlier question, Deputy, about the late delivery of the emails. It has taken a bit of time to make sure we had visibility of all of the emails, and through that process over the last number of weeks.
Have you seen this email?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Do you believe that what the contents of this email that I can't see?
Yes.
Is in accordance with what Mr. Hill has given evidence this morning?
Yes, I do. I'd like you to believe that we strained ourselves to make sure we gave you as much information as possible, which is why we had the late delivery. And it was in the back of pretty strict legal positions that we had to redact.
No, I appreciate the position you're in.
So in answer to your earlier question about were we trying to hide something, absolutely not. We will not be hiding anything. I will not be sitting here hiding anything. I will not sit here and hide anything in the future. No question about that. We will take the learnings.
The committee members would appreciate that.
Thank you. Just before I move to the next speaker, Mr. Hill, that email, not arriving at the 11th hour, but beyond the 11th hour is, it's just not acceptable. And it put to you, would it not have been sufficient from a legal point of view to delete this, the name of the junior member of staff, who seemingly made the biggest decision in regard to all of this? Would that not have been sufficient?
The decision to redact
let's say this, we get many redacted letters here, but in my time in it, I've never seen a letter like that.
Yeah, the decision to redact wasn't mine. It was in relation to the association.
Or is it simply to shield what went on? Is it simply to shield what went on? No, sorry, I'm asking Mr. Hill the question. Is that not simply to shield what actually happened here?
My understanding...
And would it not have been sufficient to redact the name of the junior member of staff?
In relation to my understanding of where the legal advice that the association has received, that I've not been privy to, that redaction is to protect the junior employee involved, which I actually think from a human perspective is probably the right thing to do, but that was not my decision.
The
Chair may want to comment to it.
Would you not agree that protects others as well? That's what really transpired here.
No, I think in my overview to you, I've given you the best context in relation to that email that I can do, and that's my position on it. But I think the Chair wants to make a comment.
I'd have to stretch my imagination a good bit to accept that